Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Walensky, and in today's interview, we're talking to Mrs. Yang Miao. I hope I didn't butcher your name too badly.
That's correct.
And this series of interviews is basically meant to inspire, let's say, the maybe next generations of researchers, or maybe even the current generation of researchers, to actually share a bit more about people themselves, not just the work they're doing, because obviously we're much more than just the work we're doing. And okay, so let me start quite broadly. Can you share a bit about your early life?
Early life? Okay, I was born in China. So it's a medium city, like 3 hours away from Beijing and 5 hours away from Shanghai. And by hour, I mean like the speed bullet train, so like 300 kilometers per hour. And later on, I moved to a coastal city called Hangzhou, which is like 1 hour away from Shanghai. And I had my university, bachelor study there. And after that, I moved to Japan in Tokyo. I studied there for 5 years. And is it still counted as early life or?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, the 5 years in Tokyo was fantastic. It first motivated me to go see even broader of what the world can offer. And during the time in Tokyo, I also visited Finland and Sweden for 6 months in exchange. So actually, it's one of the requirements of our PhD program. So we can either choose to go 6 months abroad in the foreign universities or go to industry local in Japan. So I chose to go to Europe, and I found that, okay, the working and the life atmosphere is quite different compared to Japan and China, because in East Asia it's more like intense, workaholic, stay as long as possible in the office, and but at that time in Finland and Sweden it's quite relaxed, and especially the time I'm here is summer and spring. Especially at summertime, everybody go to their like cabins, and yeah, it's quite different. So after my PhD graduate, I went to Belgium and as a postdoc and studied for a few years there. And also after that, 1 year back in China. Well, it's a long story. Then I started my career in the Netherlands from 2019. So that's all my past. Yeah.
Right. But I wonder, so it seems like you definitely are or were interested in exploring other cultures. But China is so rich as a culture and a country. It's vast. There's so much to see and do. So what made you to try or want to go to Japan and then Europe?
That's a good question. I have not thought about that for a long time. Let me think. Yeah, it's well, I actually have a friend. I had a friend who exchanged to Japan for a while, and actually, he was really fond of Japan, and he mentioned about the cultural similarities. Looks similar, but actually very different. So I was intrigued, and I think, oh, why not? It's a good chance. And also at that time, they have this kind of introduction of the Tokyo Tech in our university. I also get to know the people during that introduction talk. And yeah, and I also got the Japanese government scholarship at that time. So everything was ready. Yeah, I just went. But to be honest, at that time, I also have a chance to study in Eindhoven, TUE. But somehow I chose to Japan, maybe because it was closer to my parents. And yeah, that just happened due to my friends and also due to their introductory talk in our university.
Okay, and now when did you become interested in tennis and electromagnetism and physics? Like, was it clear to you at that point that that's what you wanted to pursue, or did you like try different things first?
Uh, at that time, well, actually, Well, in Tokyo Tech, actually we were, I was studied in Takeda laboratory, who was mainly studying radio propagation. So that was highly relevant to applied physics. And but there is also an organization who is combining, for example, antenna design laboratory and also like IC design labs and all those other factors together. So it's called Mobile Communication Research Group. It composes of like multiple laboratories who do different parts, different components of the radio system. So yeah, I think during that, because we have joint seminars and joint open house, that we do not only display posters of what each other is doing, but also we have relevant industries coming in. So gradually I get to know that, okay, actually electromagnetics is behind all, is the enabler of all the designs, all the systems for radar sensing and communications. And yeah, and also the visualization parts of the electromagnetic fields is also like very beautiful. Yeah, I guess that's why from master, after 1 year of the master course, I started to think electromagnetics is really beautiful.
Got it. Yeah, definitely. Like those, like for example, the last project I was working on was about microwave imaging. And we were developing this microwave imager where you use these cavities with random mode, basically, and with many radiating slots on top. So the radiation patterns are quite wild and like really kind of art-like. Definitely makes for an interesting art, one should say.
Actually, my first project in Tokyo Tech was a measurement project conducted together with Docomo. I'm not sure you have any information about Docomo. So basically, they are one of the biggest operators in Japan. And at that time, we were measuring 11 gigahertz. So that was 2010, I believe, or 2011. At that time, we have the measured 11 gigahertz array antennas. And for that measurement, because of at that time there were equipment limitations, we can only measure part of the pattern, radiation pattern of the antennas, and also we have to consider the measurement time. We take very coarse measurement steps, and later on, I basically have to interpolate and extrapolate the radiation pattern to make it continuous, even more smooth. And that part maybe, the first project also determined the interest, I guess, because I've dealt with this measurement and also how to use electromagnetic theory to make the pattern more complete. So yeah, maybe that's why. I also have friends who started with some optimization algorithm. So later on, they actually get more into those maths and also the optimization algorithms. So they are not that fond of EM. So I think the first project might also determine people's interest.
Okay, so were there any particular events in your life or mentors or friends that significantly influenced your direction in life and work?
Direction of life. Actually, I think yes. My the program I enrolled in Tokyo Tech is an integrated doctoral program, which means I will take master and doctoral program together in one laboratory. But actually, after entering the doctoral study, like 1 year after the doctoral study, I kind of get lost what I'm doing here. I kind of got lost interest on my topic, and also there's not much research outputs. I was like really confused at that time, but then I met this. Then I exchanged to Finland. Also, actually, it was hosted by Katsu. I'm not sure you know him. Well, he's actually a Japanese that is working.
Katsu.
Katsu.
Yeah.
And also, I also know Jan, which is the Finnish guy who actually exchanged to Tokyo Tech before I going to Finland. So I think, and we did some measurement together that is somehow relevant to my PhD project, but not 100% in alignment. But I mean, I think during that process, I figured out, I mean, like, for example, I mean, how should I rephrase it? Like the first year of my PhD was really not good, but I think during that process well, their way of working is totally different with my way of working in my first year PhD. For example, they design measurement together and implement it with different roles. And also Katz is also, because he's a junior staff, he's always like actively involved in this process and also involved in the measurement. But somehow during my first year PhD, I was like totally on my own, you know. I think after that experience, I become more active in seeking out to people, you know, hey, can we discuss about this? Maybe we can work on something together. So I do think that exchange somehow changed me and make my PhD trajectory more smooth.
So it kind of sounds like that maybe your supervisor back in Japan was not too involved within your first year
Yeah, because he was
of the
a really
PhD.
famous professor. He's really busy. He's also have a lot of administrative work. Maybe I understand him, but that's actually not so helpful for the new PhDs, especially perhaps at that time if I have a junior assistant professor that might, as a daily supervisor, that might make things get easier. But yeah.
Mm, right. And okay, so what does it mean for you to be successful in life and work?
Successful in life and work. Um, um, that's a good question. I think success in life and work is, that's a very good question. I don't know. Well, for me, I think if I'm able to do the things that I want to do without too much hurdles, I think that is already a success. For example, I want to exchange, for example, in the United States, I'm able to do it. I think it's a success in Korea because I'm able to do whatever I want. And also, for example, I have a dog, I have a house, I have a man, I have a cat all together. And I think it's, I'm happy with my current status. So I think success is being content to what I have and also to what I want to do. Okay, let me rephrase. I think success is be content to what I have and also be able to do what I want to do.
Okay, so on the contrary, what do you consider the biggest lessons in your life? You know, like something that might have maybe not gone as you planned, and that was really, a great learning moment for you.
Yeah, there are a lot of learning moments. The biggest, I would say that I changed too often or too many countries earlier days, and then I actually get lost quite some friends and quite some context as well. So every time I move to a new place, I have to start over. So in the early days, it was really fun, but later on, I realized that it's. I mean, starting a new life also costs a lot. Like it takes time, and it can be lonely in the beginning, and it can be difficult because people don't know you. They perhaps don't want to work with you in the beginning, and I think that would be the biggest lessons. But on the contrary, I think those, living in different places also make the cross-border collaborations more easy. And also, you also absorb different cultures. And sometimes I think I'm quite open. Well, I think so. It's it's a biggest lesson, but it's also not so regretful, I would say.
Got it. Yeah, totally. I mean, like, of course, especially going from Asia, all the way to Europe, that's like not only geographically but also culturally and completely very different. I imagine, right? Like me going, okay, I'm from Slovakia, going to northern Europe. Okay, Finnish culture is still very different, but
Yeah.
either way, it's still Europe, right? So yeah, absolutely, you're open because otherwise um, you wouldn't be where you are in the end. So okay, what do you do? What do you enjoy doing outside work to unwind and recharge?
Travel.
Okay.
Travel. Yeah, so I like traveling a lot. I like eat different foods or cook different foods. Um, yeah, I like art. I paint sometimes, paint people's faces,
Okay.
and sometimes I give people graduation gifts with the paint of their face, and yeah, I think that's about it. And also, I walk my dog. I think walking outdoors with the dog is quite fun as well. Yeah, it's just very normal stuff. Yeah.
Well, but painting is quite creative activity, right? Like it's not necessarily the most common among researchers. So yeah, I guess in that sense, it's really maybe nice and very relaxing. Yeah, that you do something, let's say, completely unstructured, and of course depends, of course, what type of art you're doing because there can be
Yeah.
restraints too. But
I mainly
still,
paint people's faces, so it's a bit easier because not so abstract. And
Mhm.
yeah, but it's also very fun. You can paint them slightly different than reality, and yeah. Anyway,
Well, if you ask me, painting someone's face probably is a lot more, for me, I imagine would be a lot more difficult than doing something completely abstract, right? Where you have absolutely no limit, let's say, yeah, or anything to judge against. So, yeah. So are you spiritual in any way?
sorry.
If you're spiritual in any way,
Mm, I don't think so.
okay, fair enough. And what does the balance, if there is such thing, I guess a bit of a trick question, but what does the balance between work, family, and friends and hobbies mean to you?
Balance. Well, at this moment, I don't have too much balance because every month I travel for work, uh, and also we have a lot of proposal deadlines, at a certain time of the year, and yeah, so well, I have to share the dog duties with my partner, and sometimes I think I did too little, so that would be a bit difficult. But work-life balance would be that we have a fair duty at home. At the same time, the work can be done without taking too much of the private time. But at this moment, it's very bad. I mean, I work too much. So I'm still
I
trying to
mean,
find that. If you have any tips, welcome for that.
well, I certainly don't, of course. But anyway, to me, the balance between the work and private life is really just something you can oscillate around. Like it's never going to be like, you're surfing the wave. And it just makes sense that sometimes you need to put more effort into work, right? That's normal today. And then on the other hand, there may be times where, you just relax more, and that's fine too. Okay, so now going to the more work-related questions. What would be, in your view, what are the most important skills to succeed in research?
Research, yeah. Well, how to phrase it? Well, in my early stage, I would say if a professor has a lot of knowledge, can inspire the students, it's a great skill. But nowadays, after discussing with my managers about what actually take you to the next step, I would say, well, your question is what is the most important skills, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, nowadays my viewpoint changed because basically the university require a lot of either a lot of teaching time, or a lot of funding into this university. So I would say the most important skill is actually to be able to acquire resources for the research that we want to do, and also be able to inspire and also get inspired by the students that we interact with.
Mm-hmm. And how is it going for you in terms of that funding acquisition?
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying. So it's not easy, but there was some little success so far. Yeah. So for us, perhaps you don't want to listen to details, but we mainly have very limited funding scheme, and the success rates actually is quite low. So yeah, and sometimes you see people, have just get funded all the time because they kind of group up and apply each year with different coordinators. That's also make life easier. And also, for those famous professors, they are more easy to attract fundings without actually putting much effort into it. But for juniors like us, we really have to put effort to write. But then it was evaluated like 10 or 13 minutes by random reviewers. I mean, yeah, to be honest, it's a lottery. So you just need to keep on writing, and there will be time that we get it. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, well, so in that sense, probably a somewhat better than lottery, right? Because the
Yeah,
success rate is
yeah.
probably a bit high. What would you say? What role does their creativity play in research, if any?
Mm, activities.
No,
Uh,
no, not activities, but creativity.
Creativity plays in the research. Yeah. Well, to be honest, if I look at all those funded projects, I do see a lot of things like, for example, incremental or very industrial oriented. So basically, for example, in all fields, I'm currently doing like communication or joint communication and sensing, and people really, all those funded research. Well, actually, one of the most important criteria of funded research is actually creativity, right? But if you look at all those, most of those project funded research, it's basically industrial oriented. So I'm currently thinking the creativity might try to do some try to create some or co-create with your partners some novel solutions to not only satisfy the curiosity towards science, but also in able to somehow provide impacts to industry or society. So it's not only curiosity driven, but also be able to bring some impacts that the previous project cannot. So I would say that's my current point of view. Yeah.
Right, and I hear that especially in Netherlands, the research is very much applied.
Yeah.
That it's really focused on the applications. So I guess that makes it even, in some sense, more demanding. The grant writing
Yeah. So actually,
altogether.
yeah, you're already right. I mean, for example, for the NWO, the funding schemes, they always require the industrial users, and we have to, try to connect to them to have them either, contribute to the proposal in kind or in cash. In cash is really difficult, but in kind, sometimes because it's not in the priority of the industry, so it's sometimes could be also very difficult. But not only for Dutch proposals, but also for the EU funding scheme, except for the ERC, which is really like blue sky, I think most others, for example, Mercury, Driven, they also look at what kind of associate partners from industry we can bring in. The big players like Ericsson, Nokia. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like research field relevant. So especially for us, we wanted to integrate sensing and communication. But I'm not really an antenna designer now. So basically, we do a joint communication sensing. So we do need industrial to be on the same page. So yeah.
So I get it that in your current projects you do have cooperations with industry.
Yes.
Right, and those were basically condition to obtain the funding.
Yes.
Right. So, and whom are you cooperating with, and how does that go? Like recruiting those industrial partners.
For example, in our current, 2020, in our current project, which is NWO Dutch project, it's called OTP Open Computation. We collaborated with NXP, which is a semiconductor company in the Netherlands, and also Brookhoff, which is a startup, with a slightly smaller scale, and also TNO, which is like an institute, but like research institute doing all sorts of things. Yeah, so for example, in this project, we propose to have 3 PhDs. One PhD will do like receiver antenna design, and then we approach the NXP to see that, hey, are you interested in this future results? And because they have relevant millimeter wave products, they also want to step into, for example, joint communication sensing. So yeah, and also they know some of our contacts or some of our co-applicants in this project. Then they plan to they are okay to provide in-kind contribution, which is the support, for example, manufacturing material or support in co-supervising the PhD.
So, I mean, being in academia, it's a very challenging space or industry, if you will. What are the biggest challenges for you?
Big challenge for me, I would say, well, that depends on which aspect, because, for example, we are actually actively required for 3 aspects. The first is like education, which includes supervising master and bachelor students for thesis work, and also, for example, giving lectures. That is also counted as education. And research, which includes acquire projects and also supervise PhDs, and also publish. And also service, for example, what kind of community work we do internally and externally. So I think my current biggest challenge would be how to balance education and, well, how to balance those 3 aspects, because each of them actually require a lot of energy, a lot of work. And it's not, you just list the task, I can do it within 1 week. It's normally months of work and preparation and so on. So I mean, but then at the same time, the university. Oh, sorry, it's my dog. But at the same time, the university actually requires you to do well at all those, three aspects. So sometimes I'm thinking, how can I balance? And I mean, how to prioritize, I guess.
Mhm. So I get it. You also teach courses. How many and what courses do you teach?
I redesigned a master course that is linked to radio propagation, and also I was involved in a bachelor module, which is about electromagnetic waves. And in that module, we actually take the problem-based learning approach. Basically, we don't preach, but we give problems to students. They solve by themselves with support from the TAs, and then we coach them for their solutions. So that's also an interesting approach. Yeah.
Hmm. And is that very different compared to, for example, China or Japan, or is it?
Well, actually, during my master study, we already experienced challenge-based learning. For example, during a course, the teacher basically just gave us introductory scenarios, methodologies, and so on. And then we need to work with our group mates in order to find solutions and then present the solution to relevant industry. So in that regard, I would say I was quite open to challenge-based learning. So problem-based learning is a bit similar to challenge-based learning. It's just problem-based learning. Normally, you have, fixed the solutions to solve.
Mhm. Mhm. And do you have goals, let's say, that once you reach them, you will move on to something different in terms of work, or is it more of like a continual flow for you?
Well, uh, to be honest, I'm thinking because I tried really hard to write projects, proposals. I'm thinking if I don't have any big funding getting in by, I mean, like before like 2025 or something, I would just, turn myself into a lecturer or something, yeah. Uh, I do, have very active reflections on what I'm doing, what I can actually achieve. So yeah, if I'm not good at something, I might want to change my career. Yeah. I yeah. Sometimes I'm also thinking, well, if because to be honest, the research, I mean, the academia is not really knowledge driven because they have a lot of requirements for the funding. At least in our universities like that. So
Right, but at the moment you are an assistant professor, right? So you're already tenured, basically.
yeah.
Right. Which practically means that, yeah, unless something goes terribly wrong, you should be more or less fine.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
okay, so the academic journals, they are central, to spreading the results of your research and knowledge. And with the publishing system, which is in place now, has not actually changed much over those 300 plus years that it's been in place as is. So, I mean, besides, of course, the digitization and which speeds everything up, and the internet also speeding everything up. So, are there any, let's say, changes that you would like to see in the current publishing system?
Mm, well, to be honest, during my PhD time, we tried a lot with IEEE. I'm not sure you ever heard about it. It's not IEEE, but it's Japanese version IEEE. There's a problem that they are not really recognizable outside Japan. And then later on, after I come to Europe, actually there's a lot more emphasis on open access. And nowadays, for example, in our university, we also accept not only transactions, but also open access with good quality and so on. Yeah, and also you mentioned about to visualize, or I mean, to make the review comments public, and I think that could be a very good way to move forward. Because, for example, we also have experience in submitting to transactions, and then people basically just to reject you, or first they take very long time, and secondly, just to reject you with very weird questions. Sometimes the questions actually are a result of the fact that they did not look carefully of what we did, but they always keep on asking for example, what if, So those unfairness in those review process somehow need to be changed. And also, if you look at the whole ecosystem, so the people who submit papers are researchers. The people who review, voluntarily are also researchers, but they are the person who get all the benefits. So that's also somehow need to be changed. So yeah, well, I think open access is a good thing, and not only making the article open, but also making the review process transparent and open would be good. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned that the Japanese equivalent of the IEEE is not recognized here, and by that you mean that it doesn't count when you're applying for the funding. And how is it not recognized?
For example, I think their motivation is to have to compete with IEEE, right? But they are not so open to make their publication like open. For example, you have to pay to IEEE to become a member, to ISAE to become a member in order to read the article. And also, it's not, how would you say, when it's not so open, basically the outside, I think all the Japanese universities, all the professors, they are really in favor of their own system, ISAE system. And also they have local meetings. They attend those meetings, they know what is happening and what articles are there. But outside of Japan, people have little access to it, and it does not really make them at a stronger position compared to IEEE, I would say. But now,
I see.
but now things are changing. This summer actually was in Japan for 2 months, and people actually talking about the ISE trying to make open access more common. Yeah.
Right. So would you say that kind of sounds like that the Japanese organization is kind of siloed, in its own world? So would you say that there is a lot of research or papers and ideas and knowledge that's kind of like, well, I guess not accessible to the West in a way?
Yeah, because for IEEE, you can also write in Japanese. Yeah. So,
and people do. People, I guess, they prefer to, or do they?
Sorry?
That people mostly write in Japanese or English?
I saw a lot of papers in Japanese as well, but I think English. I think English dominates. Yeah, there were a lot more English papers compared to the Japanese ones. Yeah.
Right. So another question. I don't know. Have you noticed the Coalition S or the Plan S? That's like a few years ago. It actually became an initiative to basically advance the open access movement and data sharing. That basically it's a European Union-wide initiative where basically this consortium, or how you call it, they're trying to really change these conditions for the academics in terms of what leads to tenure, what leads to funding, trying to remove those requirements that are, let's say, this number metrics driven. And so what are your thoughts on these, and how do you maybe envision the, let's say, impact on the future of research?
So, for example, in the Netherlands, I don't actively, I'm not actively following that, but I know there is action called Everyone's Talents. For example, if people like teaching, I have colleagues who like teaching a lot. It's okay. You just focus on teaching. But then, for example, if people like doing research and doing projects, like me, I mean, if I can just focus on that, that should also be fine if I, work a bit less on the other aspects. So, yeah, I think like because everybody have different focus and different interests, and they are good at different things. I would say, having criteria that is adaptive towards individuals would indeed be beneficial. It's
Got it.
actually a good trend if we all go that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because even with the evolution of academia, I'd say 200 years ago, I mean, one could have been a professor in multiple fields, right? Because the knowledge pool was not so big, let's say, as it's today, and also also those all those other activities. There was much less people in academia, so it was, let's say, a lot less demanding to teach, be excellent in teaching, be excellent in research, funding, yeah, and whatnot. While today everything is becoming so granular, yeah, and so complex and so deep, especially, yeah, that it's virtually like it's getting harder and harder, yeah. While the criteria are remaining, well, almost the same, yeah. But obviously
Yeah,
it's changing, so that's a good thing
yeah, but
because
every university is changing because, for example, I see, yeah, I'm not sure how much I should say here, but for example, if you look at some like traditionally very well reputed universities, sometimes like the power pyramids is really how to see. Like you can see like really famous professors on the top, but then there's almost no junior, young, or even foreign like staff members that actually, I mean, in those kind of really, well reputed, but like traditional universities, they do have a lot of requirements on the traditional, based on the traditional criteria, like H
mhm,
index and so on. But, because of those professors, they actually have a lot of power, a lot of resources. For example, they have a lot of PhDs at the same time, and also at the same time they need to teach because they're famous. Perhaps they can, attract students and so on. And this actually leads to some consequences. For example, uh, the ratio of supports like senior scientists compared to the PhDs is actually very low because you have less support, and also the time that the professors could dedicate to each PhD for the PhD supervision is actually also low. So yeah, that's why I think, for example, I think Netherlands did very good in this way because they trying to, like, for example, attract more junior stuff and also make the
mhm.
power, more how to say, you do not only have like very famous senior professor, but you also have junior and a middle, and this kind of, balance the power dynamics and also make the ratio of supervising and support to students is more fair, I would say, compared to those some traditional universities. Yeah.
Of course. Um, okay, so can you think of maybe, let's say, more effective or different ways to spread the research results? Like kind of trying to brainstorm here whether there could be better ways compared to journals and papers.
Uh, Data set. Because,
Okay.
for example, in our field, we have a lot of measurement monkeys who, have a lot of resources. You can do a lot of measurements, and then some data are processed, some are not. But then at the same time, there were also labs who basically do not have so much funding, do not have, so much measurement for data. So I think if we can somehow publish a data set that can make them like reusable by others, not only within the projects but also for externals. That would be really great, I would say. I think data sets, a good data set, a well-explained data set, should also, be compatible to a journal or, those kind of things. And also,
Hmm.
um, for example, nowadays there are a lot of AI relevant, for example, in your fields, how we can use AI to assist or signal or data processing. Um, Well, well, there are a lot of problems with AI, the training data, what kind of training data we use, and also what is the AI architecture we actually use. Do we just, use some existing architectures and so on? So I think those things should somehow be open as well. If a paper, for example, in communication fields, is AI assisted, we should somehow make the training data and also the AI architecture be open. For example, in GitHub or maybe some repository of the university. I think that would also be a good output, I would say. And other people could use it as well. I mean, if other people could use it, that will also be good.
Of course.
To validate their data on the same AI platform also.
Yeah, like definitely AI is all the rage these days. But to me, like, okay, I guess maybe my view is quite narrow in that sense. But looking at applying AI to data sets from measurements sounds a bit like an overkill, because opposed to like composing a text, an essay, like you write to the chat GPT, hey, write me essay about this and that. It scrapes the whole internet, and of course, like basically distills the message into what you asked it to. But then, to me, the measurement data are actually such a narrow data set. Like, okay, if you were looking for some patterns, I would dare to say that you don't need any AI, right? Because you can basically use some correlation or method. But okay, that's just my very limited
I do
view.
agree to that in some extent. For example, for smaller scale problem, I do think we should focus more on the model driven, based on physics and based on, math. But but actually, for example, in the communication world, there were also a lot of like massive MIMO or like distributed to radio units. So it's basically not only dealing with single units of data and signals, but also it actually deals a lot of units. So at this time, for example, if we still use like model driven, physics driven approach, it might quickly get too complicated for us to explain. I would say at this time, we could somehow use like physics informed or physics based AI, yeah, I do agree with you. If it's a smaller scale problem, we should focus on explainable theories. But then if it's going, beyond certain point, maybe AI is also interesting to explore. I would say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Like once the number of degrees of freedom like grows beyond certain amount, it's like weather. It's
Yeah.
hard to predict, and hard to how to really like draw conclusions or see
Yeah.
patterns.
Yeah.
So
And also using
yeah.
AI does not mean that we don't need to process the measurement data. We could also like already extract some features from measurement data using some, model driven approach. But later on, we could, to train the feature to make it extendable. It could also be okay. So I think indeed, it's actually very important. We do not only try to use AI, but also, give justifications. How can we use models or like physics to justify why we use AI? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. On another note, so some accomplished researchers say that in today's productivity-oriented environment, they would not be able to make the discoveries they did. Do you perceive that anyway in your academic journey so far? Yeah.
I do think, for example, there were a lot of new work. It's just a reinvention of the previous work. For example, a lot of work in the radio frequencies actually reinvent of the works previously in the optical domain. Yeah, in some extent, I do agree with that because nowadays the fundamental theory part is rather, especially for the applied engineering domain, the fundamental theory part is more, it's already there. I mean, there were not so many new theories that we can explore, and we could use those theories for new designs or new system architectures, but it's still fundamentally based on certain established structure, I would say. So I somehow agree with that. Yeah.
Mhm. Right. And to finish, what would you advise maybe to potential researchers, maybe back in China, some students, or Japan, because you already went through that whole journey of, going through the necessary education and then establish yourself in a foreign country. What would be your advice to them if they were to aspire for similar goals?
I think experiencing different working environments would actually be beneficial. And yeah, I would say just be open to the world and explore more. And no matter at that moment it's good or bad, it will always turn into a useful experience in life. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Fair enough.